up this little dwarf fighter. I spent a lot of time on the internet finding those minis that I think will be cool to paint up or look pretty good on the gaming table. Usually when I first get it, I kind of just check them out for any like mistakes or mold lines or any flashing that might be on the mini. Sometimes you get these little extra pieces of metal that you don't really want to be there at all. And sometimes there are these really tiny mold lines that if I just scrape them now, they won't be so obvious when the mini gets assembled and painted. When they do in the casting process, there's always this excess metal, and sometimes there's quite a bit of it, especially on the base. And if you don't trim it down, the mini won't sit flush. It'll be all tippy and teeter-tottery, which I don't think anybody likes. So you don't want it to stick out of the bottom, right? Once I do that, I usually grab a little file just to hit any of those areas where I had to cut off some flashing, that just to smooth it out. And again, it doesn't have to be super perfect, but just a light touch sometimes can make all the difference when you go to paint. So certainly some of the files are better for rounding off or straight surfaces. I think for me it's just a matter of figuring out which one seems to do the best job. So once I have that, cut off the sprue and all that stuff ready to go, I need to scrub it down with some soap and water. Oftentimes this, I don't know if it's an agent or a chemical that they put on these things, and if you wash it off, it makes it, the paint adheres better, stays on better, and looks better as well. Next step, super glue. I'm going to assemble this and put it on the base, and then we'll kind of go from there. Usually start from biggest to smallest. Make sure it's not dripping through the bottom. I have glued up the tabletops before. So now I definitely got to let the glue just all set up for a few minutes. And then I'll prime it. But it really should sit for about 10 or 15 minutes. So I'll let that dry. If it needs a second coat, I'll hit it with a second coat. Once I get started, I usually try to get down most of the base colors on the miniature first, and then go back for sort of the details. A couple of different brushes, though I will tell you that I almost always use a 0. Make sure the brush is wet. There's some people who swear up and down never to use the paint right out of the paint pot, but I think for getting down your base coat, nothing wrong with it at all. So something that took me a while to figure out was making sure that what you're painting on is stable and that your hand is stable, right? So resting my arms on the table and even doing things like holding my own hand to keep the brush really still makes all the difference for me. If I try to do it this way, I'm all over the place. And getting that first coat on anyway, you can make all kinds of mistakes, it's all right. You can go back later on and touch it up. That's what I think is awesome about paint. If you make an error, you just paint over it. Usually I try to do one base coat and then 1 or 2 washes over that. Sometimes I have to do like some little in the corners or grooves wash again, and then hit it with a highlighter too up on top. If the mini is well sculpted, it does a lot of the work for you. You know what I mean? You don't have to fight with it so much. Just get the paint on thinly and wash it a couple times, hit a couple highlights, and you're in business. Biggest challenge is probably going to be working around the eyeballs and the beard, which sometimes can be a little tricky. So I'm closing in on finishing. Just a couple of super minor touches, maybe some of the leather, and then I'll base it and be done.